You're very welcome back to Unstable TV. So we have another suggestion coming in from you guys on our American Reactions playlist. But before we get into that, if this is your first time on the channel, do not forget to
like, subscribe, comment, share. If you like videos like this, make sure you hit that bell. And if you're back with us again, thanks.
So what have you guys sent in to us today, Danielle?
So James, we were asked to check out the secret soldier that the US was afraid to send to war. Ooh, why would the US be afraid to send anybody to war, considering they're the ones that use nukes? Let's find out.
Let's see why they were afraid to grab this oil. Let's go.
It was the night before one of the most transcendental military invasions in human history, and hundreds of C-47 sky trains darted across the English Channel, carrying thousands of brave paratroopers about to face the darkest chapter of their lives. The warplanes carried a group of paratroopers unlike any other, with mohawk haircuts and tribal face paint. The outfit, led by the rebellious and untamed Jake McNasty McNeese, laughed and joked even as their aircraft was engulfed by fierce German flak fire. As the sky train lost altitude, McNeese orders his men to prepare for the jump. The lights inside the cabin then turned red, and the men scrambled to their feet amid fire and thunder. As McNeese and his comrade Willie made it to the door, flak burst through the warplane's belly, hitting Willie's backpack and unraveling his parachute inside the plane. Now significantly damaged, the C-37 continued to lose altitude as Willie desperately tried to gather his parachute and move away from the door so other paratroopers could jump. McNeese then jumped into the flak-lit skies over France, and the Skytrain exploded in midair only a few seconds later. There was no time to mourn, as McNeese and the rest of the notorious Filthy 13 outfit were now behind enemy lines in Normandy.
Filthy
They had a crucial
13?
mission to finish. Hellraiser. Jake McNeese grew up during the depths of the Great Depression and had to work to support his family from the age of 10. Hunting and fishing to feed his kin gave the young man a formidable physical condition that helped him stand out when he finally went back to school. In high school, McNeese joined the football team and found work as a fireman. He soon earned a reputation for being a defiant teen who would do anything to win. One of his teachers would remember him, quote, "He was not afraid of the devil and was always doing the unconventional thing." Soon after McNeese's graduation, the U.S. entered World War II. Then, after a nasty brawl in his hometown in Oklahoma, where he beat a man to a pulp, he decided to enlist to get the police off his back. McNeese did not want to join the infantry, and instead decided to join the emerging U.S. paratrooper experiment. He figured he would be dropped deep inside enemy lines and obey no one while engaging German soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. He would later say, quote, "If a man wanted to kill me, I wanted to look him in the eye." And thus, the mischievous Jake McNeese became the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment's problem. A wild bunch. Including paratrooper units in the U.S. military was a risky and ambitious experiment, as the American authorities knew many troopers would not make it to the ground alive. The recruiter told McNeese as such when he asked to join, going as far as letting him know that only 10 out of 1,000 would-be paratroopers made it past the excruciating physical training. Still,
Only 10 out of 1,000? That's awful, isn't it? That's... What? What happens to the rest of them?
For all the rigorous and hard training they're put through, only 10 can be selected. Why would that be? But we understand exactly why Hellraiser here made it straight through. If his teachers are quoted saying he wasn't afraid to look the devil in the eye, I'm sure the devil will be running scared from him on the battlefield.
And is the footage in this real, or was it like recreated? Do you know the way where they kind of filming it while they were training, or is this just for part of a documentary?
Was it all, like, was this actors reenacting it, or was this actually live footage from the military itself that was probably archived through government files? Let us know in the comments.
Let's get back into it and see what he does next.
McNeese excelled during training and quickly became the best recruit in his unit. But he was as reckless as he was fit, and soon became known around the camp for his defiant antics. Afraid that he would influence other recruits, McNeese was put into a particular troublemaker unit, where 5 would-be paratroopers were assigned to a single tent. The accommodations were derelict, with the tents having no flooring besides the muddy dirt of the Georgian countryside. But McNeese and his men didn't care about appearances, opting to save water for cooking instead of cleaning themselves, and soon earning the nickname of the Dirty Five. McNeese and the Dirty Five continued to gain a reputation as rebels, missing roll calls, getting drunk, and participating in bar brawls regularly. One night, after causing a significant fight inside a bar, 2 military police officers intervened. When the MPs started to beat one of McNeese's friends into submission, he assaulted them, disarmed them, and fired in every direction to empty the guns, leaving the officers injured and perplexed. McNeese was severely punished, and was the only recruit not to be promoted during his training. Still, the authorities knew he was the best, and they needed him. When someone suggested to McNeese's commander that they should discharge him, he responded, quote, "McNeese isn't hurting anything. There will be a time when you'll be awful glad to have McNeese around."
Oh, that's not really healthy
Mohawks
either, is it?
and
No.
Warpaint. By the time they made it to England, the Dirty Five had grown into the Filthy 13. The group then continued rehearsing
filthy.
jumps in preparation for the Normandy landings. Even out of combat, McNeese had lost several friends to parachute malfunctions. Still, the Filthy 13 relished in the danger and risk that came with the job, and when they were not jumping out of a plane, they were causing mayhem in camp as their way to let off steam. During an advanced demolition training session a few days before D-Day, McNeese set up a charge in a nearby tree that was triggered when a soldier on patrol walked by, sending the man into a panic. The top brass arrested the entire group, but they were released to take part in the Normandy operations.
So why
The
arrest them?
13 men
Yeah,
had
what
now
was the point of
formed a
that?
unique and feared unit. Before taking off for Normandy, the men saw McNeese wearing face paint and a mohawk haircut. He told them he was part Indian, and it was part of his cultural and spiritual heritage. The paint, he said, would be an excellent camouflage once they were behind enemy lines. In truth, only part of the story was genuine. Jake's mother was half Choctaw, but everything else was made up. Encouraged by McNeese,
wow.
the men cut their hair and painted their faces. They then boarded the warplanes, sporting a daunting look that would be spread around the world as the press released images of the peculiar warriors about to be thrown into Nazi-occupied France.
So we just had an
Everyone wanted
idea
to
and
know
ran with
what
it.
the Filthy
Yeah.
13 were really capable of. Normandy jump. Before deploying, McNeese's mission was shifted. The task he'd been assigned was changed into a much more vital role. He and his men had to blow up the bridges below the Douve Canal and then capture and hold the main bridge.
Nothing
The crucial
small.
mission required additional support, and McNeese asked for 6 more paratroopers, knowing that he would lose at least half his men during the jump. The unit took off from England at 11 p.m.
a lot to
on
ask for
June
people,
5th,
isn't it?
1944, along with nearly 1,000 other C-47s, loaded with thousands of paratroopers. They enjoyed a clear and bright night for about 20 minutes, before seeing the first flak set off around them. The following minutes were hectic and savage for the young paratroopers. Their aircraft was heavily engaged and losing altitude, forcing them to jump prematurely. McNeese barely escaped from the plane before it exploded, and many of his friends lost their lives, including Willie, whose parachute had been unfurled by enemy fire. The entire paratrooper operation was plagued with tragedy, and half the troopers that took off from Britain would never return. It was no different for the Filthy 13, and McNeese lost over half of his men during the jump and the minutes after that. Still, 3 of the surviving men managed to reunite on the war-torn fields of Normandy, and they were joined by 12 other U.S. paratroopers who had been separated from their units. From the moment they landed, they were targeted by German soldiers, and they had to react quickly and defend themselves. The Americans identified themselves by the sound of their rifles in contrast to German fire. As such, they were able to regroup and repel the Germans.
That must be terrifying, knowing that you're going to war and you mightn't even make it to the ground from the plane. That's mad, isn't it?
Not only that, to spend all that training on being a paratrooper, and not only that, to get out of the plane and be taken down mid-air and losing half your squad going to the ground as well. Like, that's a lot of friendships and a lot of bonds lost, not even before you've even fought together, just on the air. And to make it out of the plane just before it explodes. Like, how did this man keep going?
I didn't realise it was that severe, I suppose you could say. How many people lose their lives before they even get to the battlefield of a war. I didn't think that was even a thing. That's mad to even watch that. It's so scary, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's terrifying enough being up in the air, and then it's pitch black sky as well, and the only thing that you can see to light it up is the shells being shot at you.
You need to be, I don't even know what type of a person you need to be to even go into that situation. That is horrifying.
100%. And with that horrifyingness, we'll get back into this.
The bridge.
Holding the bridge.
Once they were on their feet again, McNeice and his men managed to reach the main Douve Canal, blow up some smaller bridges, and move to the main bridge. The objective was to capture
They haven't even
and
got to
hold
the
it
canal
so
yet.
it could be used
No,
by
they're
American
still-
troops. If they could not
still
keep the
far out
crossing,
from it.
they had orders to blow it up, so the Germans could not use it to reinforce the beachheads. Against all odds,
Alright,
the
that's
Filthy
a tactic.
13 dug in on one side of the bridge and maintained control, preventing the Germans from crossing. Then, after 3 days of holding the bridge, under constant German fire from the other side of the canal, the US authorities decided that McNeice's unit had been wiped out and sent a squadron of P-51 Mustangs to blow out the bridge. The Mustangs swept in and destroyed the bridge, while also striking the German and US positions on each side of the canal. McNeice and his men were well dug in and survived the strike, after which they continued to defend their positions. 2 days passed, and the Germans were significantly pushed back from the beachheads. A large group of Germans was then trapped in a flooded area near where McNeice and his men were positioned. There were over 700 enemy soldiers, and McNeice had managed to assemble a team of 40. Fortunately, the German commanders sent a messenger asking McNeice to surrender, thus avoiding a complete wipeout. However, McNeice responded by saying they would never yield, but were more than welcome to submit to them. The German officer was livid and felt insulted, so he decided to attack. McNeice then ordered his men to hold their fire until most Germans left their trenches. By now, Jake had machine guns, mortars, and all the equipment he needed for a formidable defense. Still, when the Germans were midway in their charge towards McNeice, he ordered his men to open fire. The onslaught was devastating for the Germans, and McNeice claims to have taken the lives of nearly 700 enemy soldiers. Continued mayhem. The Filthy 13 were made up of over 30 different men throughout the war, and continued to wreak havoc on the Germans while enjoying every minute of it. Despite grave injuries and incredibly antagonizing odds, McNeice survived and accomplished numerous missions. He credits his rebellious attitude and daredevil approach to his
Ew.
survival. Paratroopers were already some of the best, most aggressive US soldiers in the war, and McNeice took that perception and scaled it up to become a genuinely fearsome threat to the Axis powers. McNeice's father would later comment about his son's war accomplishments, quote, "I think he was trying to build upon the idea that if they're scared of us as crazy paratroopers, well, this just makes us look crazier." McNeice became one of the only paratroopers to make 4 wartime jumps and live to tell the tale. After Normandy, he jumped as part of Operation
Not just
Market
one.
Garden in the Netherlands. Then he was dropped in Germany before the Battle of the Bulge for reconnaissance duty. As the war waned, he volunteered for Pathfinder training, anticipating he would sit out the rest of the war in a training camp in England. To his surprise, his unit was called for one last jump into Bastogne to guide and resupply drops. He was eventually awarded the French Legion of Honor Chevalier class for his brave actions in France in 2012. At the end of the day, the officers
Oh, that was
who put up with
recent.
Oh,
his
that was
antics
very
during
recent.
training were proven correct. The war needed men like him. The Filthy 13 became an iconic and legendary unit, not only for its over-the-top looks, but also for its incredible combat deeds. Jake McNeice, with the help of historian Kaleo Griffith, would eventually document all of his wartime adventures in the book The Filthy 13, From the Dust Bowl to Hitler's Eagle's Nest, which only added more fuel to the legend.
I genuinely just assumed this was only going to be in like the 40s and 50s and that was going to be it. I didn't realise it was 2012.
Yeah, he kept that legend alive. Like, it's an incredible story. I genuinely thought it was gonna be about Native Americans, but I'd see he played on some of the culture to boost morale. But it just goes to show the belief system in a human's mind. If you can't believe it, you will achieve it.
Yeah.
Because he believed they were the scariest unit to ever do it. And 4 jumps he survived during wartime, so that's very impressive. Not even to achieve 1, but 4. I'd love to have a conversation with this man. I don't know if it'd be possible in our time, but even someone like him would be amazing.
It's mad seeing what he's done, and that he was able to, you know, keep everyone kind of coming to him because they knew he was going to be able to do it. I think that's a big thing by itself as well, because like everyone was saying in this, the majority of people doing this don't survive, and he is able to turn around and say, no, it's fine, let's go, let's do it, we can do it, we're the best. It's just, that was wild to see. I'm kind of a bit speechless after watching that, actually.
Imagine him hyping you up before you're going to do anything. You'd feel you could take on the world.
Yeah.
Of course, a very big shout out to the original content creator. Do make sure you check them out, give them a like, subscribe and share, all that good YouTube stuff. And a very big shout out to you guys for sending this over to us. If we are fortunate enough to have any vets in here, or we have anyone that has family members that were in the paratrooper groups, please let us know what that was like in the comments, if they shared any stories with you. And if they did, let us know what you thought of them.
I never heard of the Filthy 13 before. Did you?
No, this is the first time I've heard them. I've heard of paratroopers before,
Yeah.
but I've never heard of specifically the Filthy 13.
Yeah.
Something I do want to look more into now, because these guys were crazy by the sounds of it, not just on the battlefield, but off the battlefield. But I mean, if they're that like high intense and very emotional to what they do, and they're inspiring and they boost themselves up like that before going into a fight, I could only imagine what it's like to have a drink with them.
Yeah. They're basically just animals.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's what they're just vicious animals that are like, let's go and kill people. Unfortunately, that's what it is in a war. So to have that mentality by itself was just wild to me.
Yeah. They basically engulfed themselves in the actual atmosphere in the war and tried to become it.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it. But let us know your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. What did you guys think it is? Have you guys heard of the Filthy 13 before? If you have, let us know any other stories that weren't mentioned in the video.
Absolutely. And like James said, if there's anything from any other military or anything you want us to check out anyway, you know what to do. Put it in the comments.
That's been our 2 cents, and we will chop ourselves out as.